Good day, my friends, wherever you may be in the world. Today, Alan Clements here. Today is the 7th part of an 11-part series titled Deadman Walking, Freedom Never Dies, 11 life lessons in facing death. And I've been taking heart and energy and time and feeling to provide the most authentic, nuanced, humble experience of my own encounter now with a diagnosis of a fatal heart disease if I do not immediately undertake a dangerous surgery, which I have chosen not to do at this time. And it's not something unique, obviously, to me. Mortality, to state the obvious, is inbuilt not just into everyone and everything, every nanosecond is cut with discontinuity. So it's a powerful topic for me, and trying to be as natural with it as possible. This is the 7th installment. I would only encourage you, if you're interested, maybe you have people in your life, someone in your life, maybe it's you who's in hospice, who's also been diagnosed with a super complicated illness or a disease. Someone who's grieving the loss of a loved one, a friend, an ally. Someone who might benefit from this series. Please share these talks if you're inclined freely. And each of the 7 points, before I go into this 7th point, I believe in love, and it just came to me at the end of the typing here. I believe in love, and it truly does transcend at this time the notion of forgiveness. It's taken a long time to get to this place, but it truly feels unconditional at this point, that it is not my responsibility to relieve anyone of anything. And my forgiveness is basically a statement about my own sanctuary, my own internal heart refuge, to elevate a type or a quality or a dimension of metta or loving kindness or just love that exceeds the deeper roots of a violation, of betrayal. And I want to talk about that as well during this sharing, along with the issue of, I wanted to say humility, but it's more appropriate to say being humbled. And love and humility, love and being humbled, love and betrayal are all very interrelated for me personally. So lesson 1, bring God into the room. Lesson 2, grace under pressure. Courage is renewed repeatedly under harsh, unremitting pressure. 3, the quality of consciousness is everything. This mind stream, this flow of states of mind, of perceptions, of conditioning, of memories, and what we do, the Dhamma of what we do with that continuum, to me is everything. It's very tied into quality over longevity, clarity over time. Lesson 4, liberate your freedom. Do not let fear take hold as much as possible. And when fear does take hold, as I've learned from my teachers in Burma and my allies and mentors, to live in the nuanced relativity of a state of being, taking as much as possible the ideal out of the state of love, out of compassion, out of generosity, and learn, as I've said so often based upon my teachers' support, learn to quiver a type of vulnerability with patience and power and courage and determination to keep on caving it, pushing the sky away. Quivering with fear as we emerge into the radiance of freedom rather than being fearless, learning to act despite the fear. 5, life as art, art as life. And to release the mad woman in you, release the mad man in you, and share your creations until you die. And here we are on point 7. I believe in love. And it transcends forgiveness. I'm going to take my time today with this talk. May I encourage you, if you're inclined, to chill with me, savor the space that comes through you, into you, as you take the words and decipher felt emotions and feelings from them. I purposely try to be in my own humble, inarticulate, improvisational naturalness with this. I don't want to so-called prepare or to be clear alone. So I'm stumbling in my own articulation of extremely complex edges. And so with that said, hear these lessons as art in motion rather than anything complete or final. Many years ago, it may have been in 1989, 1990, many of you remember, many of you who are from Myanmar or Burma, that the 8888 revolution took place in August, and it was met with a very violent, draconian response by the dictator, Ne Win. And many students, many teenagers, adults as well, nuns and monks, were killed, bayoneted, shot at close range. Many others were tortured. Many thousands of others were disappeared. And many thousands of others fled the urban centers and congregated not too dissimilar from today with the National Unity Party of Burma in response to the military evil coup d'etat by Ming Online on February 1st of this year. But back in '88, many of the students in the universities fled the urban centers, fled the villages, and congregated along the border areas. They formed what was known as the ABSDF, the All Burma Democratic Student Front. And after spending some very unusual time within the urban centers, I myself went out to the jungle areas adjacent to Thailand, Mae Hong Son, and went to an area of Burma known in the Karen state as Menapla. And from there, I ventured out into the jungle areas under escort and met with many, dozens, if not hundreds, of student freedom fighters, and equally those students and villagers and people in the country that left and maintained an alignment to their own nonviolent activism and the power of metta, the power of loving kindness, and others took up the armed resistance to fight the evil empire within the capital at that time. Very similar to what's happening today in Myanmar. And one evening, and I've told this story many times, I've written about it numerous times, but here in this final series of talks that I'm giving for a while, Dead Man Walking, Freedom Never Dies, my encounter with this beautiful woman, a beautiful student, Ma Thet Nguyen, who was, I think, the General Secretary of the ABSDF at the time. We were gathered around a campfire at night, which was not uncommon during my months out there, and you could hear the tragic, poignant, sacred cry of anguish mixed with revolution. Boys and girls were dying of malaria and disease, some of starvation. It wasn't uncommon that people ate rat. There were no medicines. It was dire, but there was that sense, if you know what I mean, of those of you who've lived in camps and in jungle settings or been warriors in war zones. You know what one is willing to do to fight the good fight, the willingness to die as preferable than collusion with evil. And these students were beyond my capacity to anoint with courage and honor. I was deeply gifted to be in their company and feel that way today, some 31 years later. And Ma Thet Nguyen, eloquent in English, she had told me her story, and she told it primarily around that campfire that night. When I asked her with a group of students who were playing love songs and crying, and some were writing, and others were in their own humble space, and I looked across the fire and asked Ma Thet Nguyen, have you ever been in love? This ties deeply into this lesson. I believe in love, and it transcends forgiveness. And she looked at me with this sense of equipoise that only comes from someone who's been out in a jungle setting with life and death circumstances, who's been through traumas that are so severe it's hard to even put words to them. And she looked at me with this radiant sense of smile, and she said, indeed, I have, and I'm still very much in love. Now, let me pause right there. You know how it is in life where we meet those rare boys and girls, men and women, those rare little special nuggets within the cosmos of time where there's an attraction, where there's this sense of ignition, where there's a sense of timelessness emerging from the hysteria of circumstances. And all of a sudden you find yourself in this expanding tunnel of mutuality, where the hearts begin to rhythm together. There's a sense of romance, eroticism, peace, ease, belonging, love. I believe in love. And it was unexpected, but in that moment, there was that little spark of magic. And in her elegance, she began to explain, I'm paraphrasing. She said, yes, sometime back I was in the town of Taungji in Shan State where I grew up. I was a senior in the university. We had heard about the uprising in Rangoon. We had never believed it was possible to challenge totalitarianism. We had lived under the boot of dictatorship our entire lives. We did not know freedom of speech. We did not know freedom of assembly. Mind-blowing to pause right there and to reflect about our own circumstances today in freedom of mind, freedom of choice, freedom of body, informed consent. And the tyranny medically, politically, spiritually, that's coming down right now, the shaming, the apartheid. What happened in the jungle in Burma happened in Hong Kong, it happened in Tibet, it happened in mainland China. It may very well happen in Australia or Canada or New York or America or in our own lives, in our own townships. Who knows? It seems to be happening. This story isn't just 31 years ago, for me at least. And so we took to the streets, hand in hand, to march for democracy, to stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in Rangoon and in Mandalay, and we took up the good fight nonviolently. We had heard about this woman, Aung San Suu Kyi, who advocated the power of the human heart, the power of love, the power of compassion, the power of the feminine-inspired expression of nonviolence in revolutionary action. And so we took up in solidarity and marched down the streets of our city of Taunji. She's telling me this over this campfire at night. And you could hear rockets, you could hear bullets, you could hear tears, you could hear love, you could hear the guitars, you could hear the singing and the poet. It was really quite a remarkable context. And in this little space, there was Ma Tet Tet Luen, and there was me, and we had this little spark of love. And the soldiers came out and they knelt in front of us in tiers of three. We could never imagine that they would shoot. And so we knelt, as we would do in Burma, and we put our hands in front of our chest and clasped them in reverence to our soldiers, some of whom we even knew. Some were even family. And there was my mother, there was my father, there were my cousins, there was my uncle, there was my dad, and there was my fiancée. Yes, I was in love. I'm still in love, she said. And we knelt down, her words, and we began to chant, "We love you." Truly epic. We love you. You are our brothers and sisters. I wish someone would say this to Anthony Fauci, to Joseph Biden, to the members of a Congress and Senate, to the Pope, to the Dalai Lama, to everyone. I wish this mantra would be said. We're brothers and sisters. I love you. All we want is freedom of assembly, freedom of mind, freedom of thought. All we want is a high regard for the essence of democracy, dignity, sovereignty, conscience, the universality of human rights. We've never known them, soldiers. Please come to our side. We want the same thing: sovereignty, harmony, unity, beauty, the power of love. Really quite breathtaking. Quite spectacular for me. Especially with being diagnosed as terminal, and I'm meeting with hospice all day again today. It's really quite poignant to be bringing this story back up. She went on to say around this campfire that the soldiers had orders to shoot. They were obedient to an indoctrinated state of mind. And they shot. And there, in that moment, they killed family. They killed friends. And she told me around that campfire how she held the head of a family member who had been assassinated by the soldiers. And it was a complete break of anything she had ever known. The radical experience of epic trauma. It's one thing to talk about our own mortality, another thing to see the violation of life through murder. And I'll never forget that moment. And she looked at me with that timeless sense of mystery and depth. and said, our instinct was to fight, but we ran. And my fiancé and I and my parents and friends fled. And the soldiers chased us, and we hid behind homes in the village. And they had assumed, for some reason, because we were the senior members of the university, that we were the leaders of the march. And they came after us day after day. She was telling me this in an uneventful type of equipoise, very beautiful. And we fled. We had no idea that they would follow us, but they did. And eventually, after some days, in a firefight with family and friends, hiding in the deep forest, my fiancé and I were separated. And then she paused for an eternity and said, I've never seen him since. I've never dared contact family or him to see whether he's alive for fear of persecution. You ask if I have ever been in love, and I responded, indeed I have. And then she looked at me and said, I am in love, not only with my fiancé, alive or dead, but I'm in love with freedom. A freedom that cannot be taken from me, that only I can give myself. And if my life ends at any minute through betrayal or death or hunger or rape, if it's in service of freedom, my life will be well lived. I will die in love. And I'm thinking of those epic words 31 years ago around that campfire, of how this little moment, this picture book moment within the context of an apocalyptic jungle, the tyranny of dictatorship that's only gotten worse 31 years now hence. And here we are talking about possibly the third or fourth emergence of a global totalitarianism, a global communism, a global socialism, the Great Reset, a depopulation theme, adverse effects with these various vaccinations, the tyranny within the medical profession and the political domain. Marching on those streets in Taunji and taking to the ground on my knees with my hands clasped in front of you and me, chanting to our brothers and sisters worldwide, we love you. All we want is freedom of thought, freedom of mind, freedom of assembly, freedom and sovereignty over our own body, unity and harmony, the essence of democracy, dignity, conscience, the freedom to choose, informed consent, not dictatorship and tyranny. I'm taken aback by this quality of love. Now, right there, it was an epic teaching for me to hear of the courage brought forth with such poise and balance and ease of being by this young woman, Ma Thet Nguyen. And days later, I left. And although I left Menopause, I carried Ma Thet Nguyen deep in my heart, the memory of love. I do believe in love. I do believe in miracles. I do believe in magic. I do believe that there are those very rare encounters in life that aren't based or rooted in conditioned projections They're not about needs being fulfilled alone. There's something in the luminosity of the elevated principles that you share, in the context in which you meet, that there's something sacred in these rare moments where mystery and tyranny and intimacy and these timeless qualities of the paramis, generosity, moral integrity, renunciation and simplicity, wisdom and insight, patience, purposefulness, truthfulness, loving kindness, balanced engagement, compassion, these forces, these timeless qualities of consciousness, the quality of your own mind stream. Life as existential psychotherapy, if you will. The vocation of making our life a transformational vehicle. Bring God into the room, grace under pressure, liberate your freedom, don't let fear get a hold of you. Art as life, life as art. There is a freedom that only you can give yourself. By oneself alone is one purified, by oneself alone is one defiled. The seeds of purification, U Pandita told me, are within you. Nurture them and you will awaken. These touchstones that all I can come back to is, I believe in love. A love that supersedes the need to forgive. Just yesterday I was talking to a couple of friends about the quality of love and the protocol of transformation over betrayal, and how deep these feelings of betrayal take root down deep in the heart and in the soul. And what a summoning, what a courageous invitation to go down deep into the roots of where they hold you and include that too. The confidence that I am the one who architects my own creative mind state. It is not yours to take, a freedom that only you can give yourself. Right now with this fatal illness and the diagnoses of mortality and the auspices of hospice and the possibility of mindful euthanasia on the horizon and the planet in collapse and the sixth great extinction and the tyranny and the totalitarianism and I refuse to give up. Bring God into your room, Alan. Grace under pressure. The quality of consciousness is everything. Do not give life to betrayal. I've been humbled in so many ways. Have you not? Intensive meditation has brought me face to face with my preoccupation to avoid, to doubt, to run, and to avoid. When you know you're dying, you can't avoid it. You have to either cry and collapse in the face of the truth, or you begin to pick yourself up and you kneel down on the ground of time. And you say, hey, you, I love you and that too. I refuse to participate in the politics of separation. Thank you for mirroring the weaknesses of my own resolve and my own self-respect and my own confidence. I refuse to let this pain take my freedom away. I refuse to let this pain take my love away. If anything, I will reverse it and elevate proportionate to the intensity of the suffering. I will rise up like Mat that Luen's gifted 31 years ago memory in my own heart. Yes, I've been in love and I'm still in love, but I refuse to even contact my fiance or my parents for fear they may be killed. But if my life is in service of freedom, this is a 29-year-old woman in the jungles who no one would ever remember outside of a few people. And I'm bringing this up as an epic experience in the topography of my own dance into love. And she's giving me this gift today here in 2021. Alan, if your life is in service of freedom, radiate, brother. Illuminate, brother. You will die in love. Do not wait to forgive those who betray you. Forgive that place in yourself. No need. Spiritually awaken, embrace, include, bring intelligence to that edge. Do not wait for reciprocity to relieve us of the tension of our own self-generated conflict. Don't let anything in this world be an idealistic and be practical. Everything here, as far as I can see, if you so see it, is an invitation to take it higher and learn the protocol of what it means to emotionally, psychologically, and existentially engage as you would the intimacy of your own face being washed yet again. Wash the mind free of the defilements. Purify by oneself alone. Only by oneself is one defiled. Wow, 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 wow. Here's a woman who's talking to me about the tyranny of violent dictatorship. I refuse to participate in the politics of tyranny. Meditation encountered the deepest places of denial. Living inside of dictatorship for me over the years in Burma taught me the wisdom of no escape, that I really had to take it higher. Living inside of a war zone, immobilized within a body with disease and illness, high doses of LSD where you can't walk. You've got to really face your own unconsciousness and allow a feeling response to this incredibly hyper-pixelated world within. Demonic, satanic, evil, tragic, and at times, okay, just like that, the more that I relate with grace and compassion, self-acceptance, and the emergence of quivering with the feelings of authenticating these edges, life as dance of love. Yes, who doesn't want to be in love with other? But at the end of the day, we have our friends and allies, the angels, but 99.999% of the time, even if you're in relationship, even if you have a whole tribe around you, it's you who has to come to terms with the seeds of purification my teacher told me when I disrobed as a monk and left the monastery after being told to leave the country by the dictator. The seeds of purification are within you. Nurture them. Learn the fine art of nurturing, not healing, nurturing the most beautiful qualities of consciousness. I believe in love. I believe in miracles. The miracle of love just transforms the fear, just like light does, to fog, breaking through clouds. I left the jungle of Menopause, coming to the end of this sharing today. And I was gifted by the months in country, and particularly gifted by the special encounter with this remarkable activist, freedom fighter, Ma Thet Thet Nguyen. I don't know about you, but some things just become gem-like over time. Those rare friendships that emerge over time and struggle to create the mutuality of intimacy and trust and spontaneity and all the various qualities of gifting and listening. Some make it, some don't. Partnerships, intimate, sexual, romantic, existential, angelic births come and go a lot of the time. Some are blessed with the magic and the miracle and the power of intelligence to keep crafting, styling, and shaping longer-term intimacies. Ma Thet Thet Luen embedded in my soul. And over the course of the next 10 years, I came and traveled through South Asia, Thailand, and other countries in the region. And everywhere I went, I asked and looked again for the evidence of my friend Ma Thet Thet Luen. I had been touched by a very special love. It wasn't unrequited. It was quite the opposite. It was radically requited. It was just short term. And the ignition that took place, that was such a slow burning, if there's a word deeper than romance, there's something about ethical courage in the other that really touches me. And the principled mind, I really love that in an individual, especially her as a heterosexual. I'm speaking about here personal love in that sense. There's something about ethical courage, the finesse of mind states, principled presence, that there's a deep root and you're inspired by their ethical etiquette. And also the ways in which they artfully create formations of behavior, the way that they move, the way that they speak, the soundscape of shared space, and the frequency of energy that's imbued within that through tonality and timing and cadence and rhythm and just simply the musicality of their own unique expression of soul music based upon the integrity of how they mindfully inhabit consciousness, thought, and speech and action. Ways in which they make love in the sapio way, through mind and energy. And that poetry is very unique. It doesn't come around very often, but with Ma Thet Thet Luen, there was something about the context that really kind of was trans-beautiful. And I kept looking for her in Thailand, asking about her. Oddly, Menopause had fallen. It was bombed. The ABSDF splintered and fled. Many of the students within Burma now were being hunted by the totalitarian running dogs in the capital, the soldiers, the foot soldiers of dictatorship, evil. How often I would see dead bodies, decapitated villagers, entire groups of women that had been sold into the brothels of Bangkok. It was epic horror. And within it all, where is Ma Thet Thet Luen? No one knew. This is coming back to lesson 7. I believe in love as a vocational Dhamma practice. It's not like I'm in love and it's unconditional and all beings are forgiven. It's inhabiting that theme stream within consciousness that is just simply choosing to anoint yourself with the meaning, the characteristics, the behavioral traits of love, which essentially is the seeking of another person's happiness. And like compassion seeks to overcome the suffering for others, generosity chooses to want to gift others with our time, with our finances, with our money, with our voice, with our hands, with our belongings. Love chooses to elevate the status of another person's happiness, not only on our terms, but primarily You like people who like giving to you, loving you, creatively staying with you, anointing you, elevating you, helping you through complexity, gifting you with unexpected time, circumstances, and attributes that allow you ease of food, travel, and convenience. Many of you know I have these angels now in my life from hospice and doctors and nurses. They're very well aware of my own circumstances, and they're very well aware of calling me the healthiest hospice patient they've ever met or have ever heard about. And it's so wild to be talking about mortality and death with perfectly healthy people, and for me too, perfectly healthy. Accept. And just like you, perfectly healthy. Accept. We're we're fully encased in a biological set of circumstances that are conditioned by the intelligence of death. And it's like, whoa, what did you expect? Bring God into the room right now. Bring love. What does God mean to you? Ma Thet Luen. I looked for her. I had a book that was released in which I wrote about her. And I was giving a talk in Brisbane sometime in the early 2000s, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 13, 14, 15 years after I last spoke to her. And at the end of the talk, a Burmese fellow came up at the end and just looked at me with that type of timeless sense of, hey brother, you and I have been through this before. We've been in lifetimes journeying along this landscape. We're Sangha, samsaric Sangha. And you know how you know someone because you know them beyond just having met them. There's something very special about that meeting. And he looked at me with that radiant sense of eyes and he said, Mamidala Kimya, do you remember me? And I smiled and I wanted to say that I did know because I felt that sense of knowing, but I didn't remember him by name or circumstance. And I said, Mamami Babu Kimya, I don't remember you. And he says, I was around the campfire when you met Ma Thet Luen back in the day. And I went, holy Hannah, oh my God. The existential Red Sea just parted. My heart just opened beyond the naturalness of my own love. And he said, yep. I just spoke with her yesterday. I do believe in love. I believe in miracles. I believe even when it's dark out, as Martin Luther King said, it's only then do you see the stars. It's your choice, Alan, to be who you want to be despite whatever. The Die Van Frank. Look at the circumstances of boys and girls around the world throughout history. Look at the ethical, spiritual, existential courage that they brought to the forefront of tyranny. You're in the lineage now. You've just simply been diagnosed with an aortic aneurysm, and it's only a concept that you will die any second, no matter whether you cough or sneeze. But you too, we're all in the same position. So where's the surprise? There is no surprise except if you let it in and breathe into the frailty of life and breathe into the radiance of why you are alive. To me, it's all about magic at this point, all about miracle. And I refuse to let pain and suffering, in my case, the anticipation of pain, the anticipation of loss, the anticipation of suffering. Those things haunt me day and night. But I'm around that campfire, I'm talking under tyranny to a woman who had her family members assassinated, who lived in a deplorable, epically horrible condition of gunfire and malaria and starvation and roaches and rats. And here I'm hearing about her 15 years later. I just spoke with her yesterday. Well, he cut right to the core of my soul and said, she's in Sydney with her husband and family. And I will give you her phone number and address. No doubt she would like to see you. I canceled other events in the north of Australia, flew immediately to Sydney, got a car, drove out to her home, found the address, knocked on the door, and a man opened the door with two young girls, and I said who I was, and he says, my wife is here in the bedroom. Please come in. And there I walked into the bedroom in a hospital bed. There was Mathet Loen, emaciated, with IVs in her arm, a mere skeleton of this woman that I had met these years before when she was 29, 15 years later, 44. She looked at me like I looked at her around that campfire, and we knew each other. There was the most radiant, enveloping sense of unconditional love beyond anything I've ever known that she and I shared there in that space. And she said, I've been diagnosed with a fatal cancer. I decided to die at home. This is my husband. This is not the man who was my fiancé. We met in the prison camps of Thailand where we lived for 13 years. I had a terminal illness and they freed me. And these two young girls are our children. And I've come home to die. You asked me, she said, have I ever been in love? And I am in love. And I will die in love because I know my life ever more so now that you're here. Because it's in service of freedom. Small little experience that just illuminates my space as I walk through the hours and the days today and ahead. May I encourage you to encourage me to keep alive the radiance of a more higher ordered expression of our lives than the micromanaging of the day-to-day struggles and all that comes with that. Take it higher. Freedom fighters in this great sea of existence, crossing the existential ocean of anguish with our principled life, the power of the paramis, bringing our God into the room, grace under pressure, the quality of consciousness. Thank you, Mathet Loen. Thank you for the gift of your courage. And I left that day renewed, and I was told the following day by her husband that she had died that night. Every one of us will have similar stories and do have similar stories. And it may very well be that our story is very similar. And may I encourage you to keep encouraging me. Let's make the most of our lives. Essence days, I said yesterday, develop a fascination with consciousness, a fascination with love, a fascination with sexuality, a fascination with creative freedom. Build your special powers, engaging the flow in every way unique to you, creating from your core. Remind yourself, Alan, you are utterly unique. No two of us will live alike. No two of us will die alike. Abide in the sanctity of you. Use your liberty. Don't let fear take hold. Anoint everything with your special characteristics. Baptize your integrity with your adventurous wonderment. Dying is your birthright. Let go of everything unnecessary and die as frequently as needed. And illuminate the elusive world of the subconscious with your wonderment, with your embrace. It's all about, for me at this point, learning. I do believe in the rebirthing principle. Taking dying out of the stream, rebirthing into the beauty of all things that you consider to be right, true, and good. Bhavana, the beautification of consciousness. Nibbana, the unconditional release of fear, shame, greed, and attachment. Quivering at that edge, Nibbanify everything. Prioritizing the quality of consciousness over outcome. Quality over longevity. And Ubuntu. I'll close here. We can never say it enough that we are individuals in this great morass of beauty and horror, but we're inseparable in our interrelatedness with everyone and everything. And within that circle of everyone and everything, there are a few people that we call family and friends. And within that circle of family and friends, we have what's known as sacred alliances. Now that I've been diagnosed and now that I know time is short, radiance is high, urgency is more composed. I'm around that campfire. Ask the most daring questions from your heart. Play the highest stakes. Authenticate, realize, create, and evolve. Overcome. Say things that are so radically unpopular. Everyone in your life was waiting for you to finally release yourself from shame and confinement. Break free into the artistry of your new vocation. Give up the old. Say no, say yes. Whatever is required to make your life your art. Do the impossible. And I do believe in love. And I've overcome the need to forgive anyone. It's not my need to forgive you. So from my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in today. And may you have a beautiful day, God willing. Touch and know, easy go, freedom flows. I keep this mantra in my mind. Touch and know. Quiver at times, cry at times. Easy go. Freedom flows. So from my heart to yours, thank you for tuning in. Remember, only you, through reasoning power, the relativity of intimacy and radical trust, can we make it through. Only you can do you, ultimately. So from my heart to yours, have a beautiful day. God willing. See you tomorrow at this time.